One consistent part of any balloon strategy is that there will always be a stalling tower. Whether it be a slowdown, a stun, or a blowback, every strategy in this game typically includes some form of stalling, because stalling is pretty essential, especially on harder maps. Now, regardless of what your personal choice of stalling is, there are two towers that have been great rivals in this field, and today I want to compare them. Those two towers, of course, being the Tier 5 upgrades Icicle Impale and Superglue. Now, to understand why these towers are at odds and why they're both so good, first we have to take a look at what actually makes the towers what they are, starting with Icicle Impale, because why not? First of all, let's take a look at I think I put on the wrong footage. Icicle Impale is a tower that does 50 damage and as well freezes its target. Normal balloons are slowed to a halt, while MOABs, BFBs, and DDTs are set to whatever the speed of a ZUMG is, and ZUMGs are slowed just by 50%. And while those are just the base stats of Icicle Impale, there's also to be considered the buffs that it can receive. Of course, as a primary tower, this includes the Top Half Village, and as well Alchemist, Overclock, and other such buffs that every other tower can receive, and also it is noted that the Ice Monkey in general can actually receive a buff from the Absolute Zero, because in case you didn't know, Absolute Zero provides a 50% attack speed buff to all Ice Monkeys on screen. Now, that said, we still have to look at the viability of the Tier 3 and Tier 4 upgrades for this tower, because I mean, why would you get a Tier 5 if the previous upgrades suck, right? And thankfully, the Tier 3 and Tier 4 upgrades preceding Impale are pretty great, actually. The Tier 3 Cryo Cannon takes the Ice Monkey's usual attack and makes it ranged instead of radial, and as well it doubles the attack speed, and as well gives it a little less pierce, but at the same time gives it a smaller blast radius. Now, you could interpret this as a downgrade, actually, but personally I appreciate the ability to target the tower as opposed to constantly firing in a radius, but of course it's pretty situational. However, at Tier 4, the Icicles upgrade causes balloons that are frozen to sprout icicles upon being frozen. These icicles do 2 damage to any balloon that runs upon them, and as well, every icicle can pop 3 balloons before they disappear. Also, I couldn't find any confirmation on this, but I'm pretty sure on Tier 5, the Icicles gain the same amount of damage that the main attack does, which is to say 50 attack damage. And now, with all that said, let's move on to Superglue, and see what makes him do what he does.
You finally fixed the chair.
You know it. Whoa! Gorilla Glue. Of course.
Superglue is a tower that does 50 damage per shot, what a weird coincidence. Upon being hit, ZUMGs are slowed down by 90%, BFBs are slowed down by 95%, and MOABs, DDTs, and normal balloons are slowed down to a complete halt. Not only that, but normal balloons will be stunned for 24 seconds after being hit, and as well MOABs, after being hit, continue to have a MOAB glue effect for 5 seconds. Yeah, there's not really as much stats to talk about with Superglue. Superglue is just kind of what you expect, really. And of course, the viability of Superglue is going to be highly dependent on how good its Tier 3 and Tier 4 upgrades actually are. Starting with the Tier 3 upgrade MOAB Glue. Now, MOAB Glue is probably the most used stalling tower in the entire game, and it's a pretty simple one too. Simply, upon being applied, the glue of a MOAB Glue will slow down a MOAB by 37%, and as well will slow down other balloons by 75%. The effects of MOAB Glue will last for 12 seconds on MOABs and 24 seconds on normal balloons. And it's also worth noting that, unlike its successor, MOAB Glue does not slow down more or less depending on the tier of MOAB. And of course, there's also the 4th tier upgrade, Relentless Glue. Jokes aside, basically Relentless Glue just makes it so that when a balloon is popped that has MOAB glue on it, it'll leave behind a glue trap, essentially. It will last for 5 seconds, and it will go up to 1 extra balloon. Yeah, to be honest, after reading out those stats, I feel like those sentient cars actually had a point. So now that we've established what these towers do, let's actually talk about the uses, strengths, and weaknesses of these towers, and as well a little bit about cross-pathing. Now, while it's very apparent that both these towers are mostly made for stalling MOABs, there are more functions that a tower would have, and Icicle Impale is definitely not just a one-shot tower. Icicle Impale not only does 50 damage per shot, he also does Icicles, which the Icicles provide a big spike trap that also damages MOABs, ceramics, and anything else that it comes in contact with. And this damage definitely trumps the damage of Superglue, which is pretty much restricted to simply the 50 damage shot that it does, plus the corrosive effect that it has for some reason. However, while super glue lacks damage, it definitely makes up for it in the slowdown that it actually occurs. Because keep in mind, Icicle Impale only slows down everything under a ZMG to the speed of a ZMG, and then ZMGs by 50%, while on the other hand, super glue slows everything down almost to a stop. Or in the case of MOAB's DDTs and balloons, it actually is slow to a stop. So in this way, especially for its price, super glue is pretty much unparalleled in its actual stalling ability. Now, another point of contention here is going to be how crosspaths actually affect the towers and how useful or unuseful they might actually be. And I'm going to say it outright, the clear winner of this is going to be Icicle Impale, because I mean, the top path allows it to pop leads and camos without any further village buff, and as well it gives it a permafrost effect, which makes it so that every balloon it hits gets a 25% slow effect even after it's been frozen. And on the other hand, well, I don't really know what crosspath you would even want for super glue, because the middle path increases its pierce, which is very useful, but to us the top path doesn't even do anything, because it already has a corrosive effect, and also, just a fun fact, the glue soak upgrade doesn't even actually work because it does not soak through MOAB layers whatsoever.
That's what the kids call epic fail.
And even then, that's still not very competitive with the Icicle Impale's middle path crosspath, which gives it an extra 33% attack speed, and it also allows the frozen balloons to actually soak through another layer, so that frozen balloons don't immediately become unfrozen after they've taken damage. Now, there is a place where they're actually quite equal, and that's price. The price of an Icicle Impale versus a super glue is actually pretty much the exact same, the only difference is $80. And even counting crosspathing, which the glue definitely has more expensive crosspaths, it's really not that big of a difference. Now, in the end of all this, I can't really say there's as much of a winner as much as there's pros and cons. The pros of Icicle Impale is that it can do a lot of damage, and at the same time stall MOABs to a pretty significant degree, and as a result of it being able to do both roles, it's a bit more versatile than superglue, because superglue is just purely a stall tower. It can only really slow down things and do a mild amount of damage, but I would never advise getting this tower if you don't have the budget for a good DPS tower. This is also reflected in the Tier 3 and Tier 4 versions of these towers, where MOAB glue is pretty much the supreme support tower. It's going to be used in 99% of your games, and in general is pretty much inessential for something like Chimps or Impossible mode. Although, ironically enough, Icicles does not see the same popularity, and in fact, it sees quite the opposite. While Cryo Cannon and Icicles are perfectly viable for defense, their weakness to white balloons and the general unpopularity of the Ice Tower generally gives these guys a lot less use than the bottom path glue ever has. And in the end, I can definitely say that Icicle Impale is probably the most practical tower out of the two. Super glue is not without its perks and its upsides, such as the lack of weakness to a certain type of balloon, and as well, like I said before, the increased amount of stalling. But the damage, stalling, and combined with the fact that the Tier 4 is actually viable, there's a pretty clear winner here. So, that was Icicle Impale versus Superglue. It's a little different from the videos that I usually do, but ever since my channel kinda got, you know, I decided I'd try something a little different, just to keep myself fresh. And not only do I mean fresh topic-wise, I also mean fresh graphically and visually. If you notice, I did put a lot of effort into this one, and so did my lovely partner. Check out his stuff in the description. And I'm gonna let you in on a secret. If you want to see sneak peeks and generally what I'm probably going to be doing next, check out my Twitter and Discord. And as well, if you actually liked this video, like the video. Click the actual like button on the video. And also, I suppose you could subscribe, because, you know, you actually like the video. One might even say that you could even share the video, or comment on it. Also, yes, by the way, I'm still going to be re-uploading my old videos, but it's going to be a little slow, because I don't want to, you know, spam people's feeds. But with all that said, that'll be it from me for today, and I bid you all a farewell.
Gorilla Glue. Of course.
Original Gorilla Glue expands into the materials to form an incredibly strong bond.
Nice.